selection process. Let's start with the session. We will be looking at the second stage process for the MDI programs. Over here, as you know, MDI Gurgaon, in its second stage selection process, it uses one group discussion and one personal interview. Looking at past years' experiences for MDI Gurgaon, the group discussion was the first process in the second stage last year. And here, typically 12 to 15 students participated in each of the group discussions. And each group typically had 15 minutes time available for the discussion, and around 3 minutes were given to each group to think about the topic as well. At the end of the discussion, in some of the groups, students were asked to summarize the discussion, while in some groups, they were asked if they wanted to say something more. Individual students were asked if they wanted to say something more in the topic. And in some few cases, groups were also asked to write down a conclusion of the discussion in 2 to 3 minutes time. Now, as you will note, in these cases, people were asked to write a conclusion of the discussion, not just a summary of the discussion. When we talk about summary of a discussion, a summary will only be a summation of major points mentioned by different people in the discussion. So the major points which were covered in the discussion, those will have to be presented in the summary. But when you talk about a conclusion would be more of a summing up of the points as well as a judgment regarding which view the group seemed to be converging on. Judgment that the group was likely to arrive at. This is the difference between a summary and a conclusion. So if you are asked to write about the summary, then please note, in a summary, you are not required to present your own opinions at all. You are simply required to present those points which were already there in the discussion, which had come up in the discussion, which the different participants had presented in the discussion. But in a conclusion, you need to judge which was the idea overall that the group seemed to be converging towards. So a conclusion will require your assessment of what the group seemed to be agreeing to, what the consensus that the group seemed to be arriving at. The conclusion will require your judgment. On the other hand, the summary does not require your judgment at all. The summary is not about simply your points. Rather, a summary is about all the points, the major points which were discussed during the GD. This is the difference between a summary and a conclusion. So in your group, if you are asked to write a summary or a conclusion, be very careful about what the question is asking you to, what the instructions are asking you for, and write accordingly. Now, let us look at some of the topics that were there in MDI Gurgaon last year. Just a second. One question has come up from Vishal. In conclusion, we can't give our opinion that may not be discussed during GD. Yes, Vishal, in your conclusion, you should not be giving your personal views on the topic. You are only required to give your view of what consensus or what conclusion the group as such was moving towards. The group as such was appeared to be likely to arrive at. In conclusion, you do not have to give your personal views which were not presented during the discussion. If there was some point that you presented during the discussion, then in a summary as well as in a conclusion, you can mention those. And then you also have to mention in a conclusion, you also have to mention whether the group seemed to agree to that point, or if they were agreeing to the opposite idea, you need to present that as well. In a summary, you simply need to write down all the points, the major points which were there, which were presented during the group discussion. So both in summary as well as in conclusion, you have to stick to the major points which were discussed during the GD. You are not at all required to present your personal views. On the other hand, if we come back to the previous slide, as you can see, in some of the groups, individual students were asked if they wanted to say something more on the topic. If you are asked to say something more on the topic, then you can present your personal views. But for a summary or a conclusion, you should not be presenting your personal views on the topic. There, you should only talk about those points which were presented by the different candidates during the GD. That is all you have to do in conclusion, or in a summary. If there are any questions that any of the candidates have, you can post your questions in the chat box. We will be taking up the questions during the webinar itself. So if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat box. Now, looking at some of the topics which had appeared in various groups last year. Sustainable infrastructure is the key to inclusive growth. Should India focus more on renewable energy rather than on thermal and nuclear energy? CSR benefits corporates more than it benefits society. Role of indigenous leaders in coming elections. The presidential form of government will be better for India than the prime ministerial system. These were some of the topics which had appeared in the group discussion at MDI Gurgaon last year. Now, as you can see, these groups, these topics rather, which had appeared in the different groups. As you can see, these topics are primarily analytical in nature. They require your assessment on various topics, your in-depth understanding, and your opinions on various topics, your judgment on various topics. This, of course, does not mean that you ignore logic. Whatever judgment, whatever opinion you have, that opinion needs to be supported with proper examples as well as with good amount of logic. But essentially, here you are not merely being asked to describe something. The focus is more on explaining your opinion on various topics. The topics are analytical in nature, hence you are required to present some judgment and support that with your logic. This, of course, again, please note, this does not mean that at the beginning of the discussion you have to take a stand. You can very well, as in a regular GD, what you should do over here is, first of all, first step, present a structure for the discussion. First step, decide which are the major parameters, which are the major aspects on the base which need to be looked at before you can take a discussion on the issue. So the first step would be to provide a structure, identify the major issues, the major aspects that need to be considered before any judgment can be taken on the given topic. Once this is done, after this you can then discuss the various pros and cons of the issue regarding the various issues, the various aspects that you have that the group has identified in the structure of the discussion itself. Now, when the discussion of the pros and cons, etc. is taking place, at this point of time, if you feel that there is some important aspect which was not covered in the structure that was laid down at the beginning of the discussion, then you can very well bring in additional issues as well. If you feel that additional issues are also relevant, you can certainly bring in those at any point of time during the discussion. You need not remain limited, you need not be restrained by the aspects which were covered only in the initial structure that the group had agreed to, that was discussed during the group GD within the group. You need not limit yourself to this initial structure. You can definitely bring in additional issues as well. And finally, based on the pros and cons which have been discussed in the issue, then you can arrive at a stand. Then you can arrive at some position regarding the issue, the topic which has been given to you. For example, if I look at a topic like, should India focus more on renewable energy rather than on thermal and nuclear energy? If I have a topic like this, then how should I proceed for the discussion? If I talk about the structure, obviously in the structure, I have to say that I have to first of all identify who are the key players from whose perspective the benefit or the pros and the cons of a particular form of energy is to be measured, is to be assessed. So the key players, first of all, will be the locals. For example, when you talk about any power plant in surrounding areas, what will be the impact of that power plant? Then you can look at the society or nature in general, whether there are going to be long-term ecological effects, etc. These also need to be considered. Further, we also need to assess the potential of each form of energy. For example, if I look at, say, something like renewable energy, what is the potential for nuclear energy? How much can be acquired from here? If you look at, say, India's current power production, the current power production of India is in the range of about 1,70,000 megawatt, which is one of the lowest in the world. This 1,70,000 megawatt roughly gives only about 150 watts per person per year in India. So there is definitely need for massive increase in power production. Massive increase in power production is required over here. Now, is it possible for us, if when such a large additional requirement of unsatisfied demand for power is there in the country, then the obvious question that emerges is, can we afford to ignore any particular power, any particular form of energy, any particular method of power production? This also needs to be considered. These can be some of the major issues. After this, once you have identified these major issues, then you can look at renewable energy on the one hand, and say nuclear energy or thermal energy on the other hand. You can talk about their effect on nature, their effect on the potential risks which are there. These can be considered both for renewable energy as well as for nuclear energy as well as for thermal energy. Then you can talk about which is the best form of energy. At the same time, looking at the requirement for further production, requirement for additional power generation. The group may still conclude that no form of power production, no form of energy can be ignored given the large demand that we have over here. Or if the group focuses more on the risks that certain forms of power production pose, then you can arrive at an idea where at a position where you say that yes, there are more risks associated with these particular forms, let's say with nuclear as well as thermal power, but considering our requirement, we cannot afford to ignore them. So we should use them only as a last resort, or we should use them sparingly where perhaps no other option exists. Only in those cases these forms should be used. Plus, there can be proper precautions taken so as to ensure that the dangers of nuclear power or thermal power do not affect us significantly. This can be one approach towards the group discussion. As you can see, as we have discussed, topics given are mostly analytical and opinion based in nature. Hence, a similar structure can be adopted for most of the topics. First of all, identify the significant parameters, the significant aspects which need to be discussed, the significant aspects which need to be discussed in order to enable you to form a judgment on the issue. Then you can discuss pros and cons of various issues on the different parameters which have been identified. Then finally a judgment can emerge. This can be one ideal method for proceeding in an analytical discussion. This is as far as the MDI Gurgaon group discussion experiences for last year were concerned. Now, moving on to the personal interview. Last year, typically 2-member panels had interviewed candidates at MDI Gurgaon, while a few of the candidates had reported that in their panel there was only one interview. Also, in general, the average interview at MDI Gurgaon tended to be slightly shorter than most of the other institutes. Here, interviews were often just about 10 minutes long, and some students even reported that their interview was just about 5 minutes long. So, MDI Gurgaon interviews tended to be somewhat on the shorter side as regards their duration. Now, the interviews themselves were quite pleasant and very general in nature. There was no set pattern to the interviews. In many cases, students going to the same panel were asked completely different sets of questions, completely different kind of questions. Some typical areas from which students had been asked questions. Current affairs was one area from which many questions had emerged quite often, and even in current affairs, questions were mostly not merely fact-based but rather opinion-based. So again, if we look at the group discussion as well, as we have discussed, the group discussion also was primarily analytical. The group discussion topics given were also rather analytical in nature. They were judgment-based, opinion-based topics only. Similarly, even in the personal interview, current affairs questions and students' opinions on those issues, on those topics were discussed in detail. So MDI Gurgaon seems to focus a lot on the way a person thinks, on the amount of logic that the person has in his or her thinking. That seems to be critical as far as the MDI Gurgaon selection process is concerned. And in some of the cases, students were also queried on the topic that was given to them for the group discussion. Students were sometimes asked to explain some point that they had presented in greater detail. Even that happened in many of the interviews. So this is as far as the MDI Gurgaon personal interview phase was concerned. Now we have with us Puneet Sehgal, who is a current student of MDI Gurgaon. So Puneet, please introduce yourself to the aspirants this year, to this year's aspirants, and do share your experiences of the GD and personal interview.
All right, Rahul. Good evening, everybody. I would first want to go on to the GD process. Like we talked about, Rahul, could you take these? Could you please present the GD slide?
Okay, sure.
Right. So as Rahul rightly told that the topics are generally related to current affairs, and also they're very analytical. So one of the things that I would like to tell is that the aspirants should go in prepared, and I think Frontline magazine would really help them in preparing for these, because a lot of topics that were taken up at my time, they were largely taken up from the Frontline magazine. So that is what was done. Also, the GD and PI panel are very, they would want to hear you. So they would not come and cut you in between with points unless it's a very try and not make points which are which harm a particular community. So you'll be okay as far as that is concerned. Also, the topics are not very not largely focused on the international events, but largely on the national events. And also try and so while you're going through different magazines, go on the debates side of it. So you need to know both the sides of a topic. So the pros and cons, as Rahul rightly talked about, you need to know about that. Even if you miss out on some of the hard facts, that is okay, but do not give in wrong facts. So it's okay not to speak a fact than to speak a wrong fact. But while you're reading an article, do understand both the sides of the coin. So, and you should not hold your opinions very strongly in case you do not know about the facts. As I said, so the GD topics, what we saw were largely the current affair based, but they can also be very abstract. Topics like success and entertainment, they've also been given. Success and happiness, how much your success depends on happiness, and very varied topics have also been given. That largely depends on that is very ad hoc, and they could be given.
Okay, Puneet, what was your topic for the GD last year?
Okay, mine was last to last year, and it was related to some of the events in Northeast India.
Okay.
So that was again a current affair based topic. and it was based on some of the events happening in Northeast India at that point in time, and it was again a debate-based topic. Whether the government's stance in that event was correct or not.
Okay.
So you would have to come up with both the sides of the coin, as we earlier talked about.
Okay.
Right.
Fine. And how many? Okay. Just a second. There are some questions which are which have come up. One of the questions that Raghav has asked is how many marks are accorded to the GD and PI and the CAT score in the final analysis.
All right, Raghav, it's a very genuine question for people applying to MDI. Earlier, they have been giving a lot of weightage to the CAT percentile, but this time it seems to have changed. I'm not very sure about it. They haven't communicated anything, but for past lot of years, the selection criteria for MDI was generally above, say, 94 percentile and above 70 percentile in all the sections. But this year, the calls, as far as I've seen, have been given above 85 percentile in each of the sections, and accordingly for the overall. I'm not very, Rahul, I would like you to correct me if I'm wrong in these statistics, but this is what I saw on Pagalga, and I was able to talk to someone, right? So this is what the current scenario is. So I think there is there has been a new director as well, and they've been talking a lot about the current selection criteria, so there might be a change. But one thing that so you really should not worry about how many marks are accorded, because GD and PI I think would play a major role this year.
Okay. Okay, Puneet.
Okay, so Raghav says that he has 96.69 percentile. See, obviously you do not need to worry about it. The one thing that you need to now slightly move on to the PI part.
Just a second, Puneet. One other question that Nilanjan has is ideally how many times in a 15-minute GD should we pitch in? Considering 12 to 15 people in a 15-minute GD, it is difficult to pitch in and contribute. Yes, Nilanjan, you will have just about 1 to 1.5 minutes on average. So yes, it is going to become slightly difficult to enter such a GD regularly and participate very actively. But still, you should try to ensure that you enter the GD on at least 4 to 5 occasions, and if you are able to speak for between 20 to 30 seconds on each occasion, then that would still ensure that you have spoken for at least about 2 minutes, maybe about 2.5 minutes. If you are able to make 5 entries and speak for about 30 seconds on each occasion, which itself should be good enough as far as the amount of participation is concerned. Of course, a lot of weightage will be given to the quality of the content rather than simply the volume of the content. So even if you speak a little bit less, that should not be so much of a problem if you have spoken well. But ideally, you should try to ensure that you are able to enter the GD at least 4 to 5 times, and on each occasion are able to speak for at least about 20 to 30 seconds. That will ensure that you have spoken for at least about 2 to 2.5 minutes. And if you, in those 2.5 minutes, if you are able to come up with 4 to 5 good points, that will be considered good participation.
And I would also like to add to this thing is, Nilanjan, while you're in MDI GD, so as we talked about that, there a lot of them are based on the current affairs. So that is where you can have an edge, because a lot of people might not know about that incident or that event. So in case you have your readings in place and you have your current affairs in place, you would be able to contribute and maybe make a large contribution to the group discussion.
So your knowledge of current affairs will become very beneficial for you, will be a critical edge that you can have over the others.
Exactly. So, and at the same time, I'm sorry to interfere, but at the same time, not asking you to mug up the current affairs as of now. but it will be a good idea to go through the current debates that are going on.
For example, if you wish to look at some of the topics, recently you have had the Afzal Guru hanging, and there is a lot of debate going on about that. Women's safety issues, those are being considered. The Justice Verma report, the FDI in retail issue, all of these are some very typical issues that may come up, so be prepared on these. The prediction by the CSO, the Central Statistical Organization, about the slowdown in India's economic growth rate, in the growth rate of the Indian economy, the budget that will come up. There will certainly be lots of debates about whether the policies that have come up, the policies, the new policies that have been presented are going to be helpful, or if more could have been done, etc. All of these will be some very common topics which can come up in the group discussion. Some of them may even come up in the interviews. So do prepare for these as well. Another point that has come up is it okay to interrupt? And similarly, which one is recommended? A negative impact as in getting aggressive, or no impact at all? See, first of all, yes, it is okay to interrupt, but you should always be polite while you are interrupting. If one person is speaking, when you want to speak, raise your voice a little bit. Mostly when one person stops speaking, at the same time you will have at least 2 to 3 people jumping in and trying to speak straight away. So it's not as though you are ever going to get an opportunity where you are the only one trying to speak. So when you are trying to enter the GD, do raise your voice slightly, do raise your voice over the others so that you can be heard, and continue to speak. There is absolutely no harm in that. But of course, do not get aggressive either. Do not ask others to keep quiet, etc. You can very well, if someone tries to interrupt you, for example, you can very well be polite and say, please let me complete my point, etc. Such a thing can be said. There is absolutely no harm in that. But at the same time, do not get over aggressive. Do not try to shut others down. Do not try to get others to, do not try to compel others to listen to you, etc. So don't be over aggressive. That will not help. But at the same time, you certainly have to speak for some of the time at least. That will definitely be important. And another question that has come up is, any brownie points for starting or summing up the topic? Normally, we do not hear about any extra points for starting or summing up of a of a group discussion. But what happens is, the start of a discussion, the beginning of a discussion is typically the quietest period in the discussion. Further, when you are starting a discussion, then you have a great opportunity to present a good structure for the discussion. You have a great opportunity to highlight the major aspects that need to be covered, the major issues that need to be looked into when taking a judgment on the given topic, when taking any position, before taking any position on the given topic. So because you have a very quiet period available to you, you can present more points, you can present a proper structure, and that can certainly work in your favor. So yes, starting a discussion or providing a good direction to the discussion can certainly be helpful. And the same goes for summing up of the topic as well. If there are different ideas that people are discussing, if you are able to try and if you are able to bring the group to a consensus, or if you are able to, or if you at least try to create a consensus, present a reconciliation of the different ideas that the group has discussed, then certainly those things will be in your favor. Those things will certainly help you. Any questions that anyone has, please keep posting them in the chat box. We will be taking up the questions during the discussion itself, during the webinar itself. And Puneet, how was your interview experience?
All right, so Rahul, the interview panels at MDI, they'll give you all the time to talk. You don't have to get nervous. They'll even try to calm you down. But again, a person has to know about himself. That is one of the first requirements.
Okay.
There will be some questions related to current affairs and general awareness. So they could ask you about the current ads going on the television, but that would obviously come up from what you've spoken. So if let's say I spoke my interest to be in sales and marketing, and the professor who was taking my interview, he was taking up a subject called business ethics. And one of the questions that he asked me probably was that if a company says that 8 out of 10 people like our product, is it an ethical statement to make? So that is obviously, again, we talked about the analytical part. How do you understand the situations? How do you understand an issue? That is really important. So those were some of the questions. Of course, they would also ask you a lot about your hobbies. They would want to understand how much you are interested in what you speak. So there have been interviews wherein people said that I want to start a coffee chain of my own, and in the end they might want to put you in a spot, and just for that they might end up saying that you're actually not built for MBA. So that have been some of the interviews that people were told that you're not built for MBA, but yes, they were selected because yes, they had a passion. What they're basically looking for is a passion and how much you are there for it.
Okay. So, Puneet, can you briefly tell us about your background?
All right. So I graduated from NC College, the Kurukshetra University. Thereafter, I worked with Career Launcher for 2 years.
Okay.
I was initially in the sales department for Career Launcher. I was at the CP Center. Thereafter, I was handling content development. I was in the content development team for Career Launcher, developing content for Maths. So when I went over there, I gave them my introduction and they talked about sales in Career Launcher. But they do not have a lot of preconceived notions about where you come from and what you've done. So that is one of the questions that people always have in their minds. If I'm not from a very good college, I do not have a good work experience. There have been students in MDI who actually they wanted to be entrepreneurs and they have given up 2 years of their life trying to do that, and even they've been selected. So obviously they do not have a lot of preconceived notions about especially in MDI. They're not looking for very specific college brand names. They're not looking for very specific WorkX brands, but they're looking for what drives you and what you're interested in. So those are some of the areas you need to be strong at.
Okay, so what was the first question that you were asked in your interview, Puneet?
The first question usually in an MDI interview would be about introduce yourself.
Okay. So
Yeah, please go ahead, ask the question.
Yeah, so in your introduction, what all had you mentioned? What all did you talk about?
All right, so I talked about my graduation. I talked about my work experience. I talked about how I actually had a job offer from some of the other companies, but I wanted to probably work in sales for some time. So that is what I told them.
Okay.
I told them about my hobbies.
Fine.
But I've been telling students that this is a question which is totally open to you. So it's a very loose ball. You can go ahead and hit it for a 6, and given all the points where you want them to ask questions. So sales was a part that I wanted them to ask me questions from. So that is a part I emphasized on. And obviously then the next question did come from sales. The next question he asked me was, okay, why did you take up sales? Why did you leave that company?
Okay, so the next question was why sales?
Why sales? Why Career Launcher? why did you not, do something which is an extension of your engineering background?
Okay. So what was your answer
Right.
to this?
See, my answer, I usually don't tell it because then, students tend to copy it. But then my answer was that I did not want to sit in front of a computer for, let's say, uh, 15 hours and do coding all day long. So I took up sales because I wanted to meet people, wanted to go out, do some hands-on work on the ground. That is what my answer was.
Okay. And what did they ask you after that?
So after that, as I told you, he was a professor from, he takes a course related to business ethics. So that is what he asked me. Let's say if there is a company that claims that 8 out of 10 people say that our product is the best, is that a correct claim to make? Is it ethical?
Uh-huh.
So I came up with different possibilities that, it depends on what the claim is. Okay, is there a certifying authority which certifies this claim? So what is the demographics that you're choosing? What is the kind of population that you're choosing for making this claim? And are you mentioning all those details while you're making this claim?
Okay.
And so that is what it, what would define whether it's ethical or not if you're trying to cheat people with that. So he just delved deeper into the entire thing. Any point that I made, he cross-questioned it. But the important thing at this point is that you need to keep your cool. You do not have to get aggressive. You do not have to, get stuck to one notion. Probably you need to, think at, at different aspects and also take hints from the next question that he would ask. So he was always giving me probably hints in the subsequent questions, wherein he would say that, okay, so let's say if the claims have not been certified by an authority, then how do you go about it? So then I said that you need to probably tell about the demographics. So then he tell, all right, fine, these are the demographics. Is that the correct claim then? So he would probably, as I told you earlier, they would want to listen to you. They would want to understand what you're thinking. But at the same time, the candidate needs to be flexible on his thought process. So you don't have to get stuck on one thought process. You don't have to get nervous at that point in time.
Okay. Okay.
Right. And then there was a question about strengths and weaknesses. While I was talking about sales, I had mentioned in probably we always tell the students that you can guide an interview. So that was again the thing I told in one of the statements that I was making while I told about sales and everything was that it matched my strengths. So the next question after I've completed all that, they would ask me that, okay, how does it match your strengths and what are your strengths? So that is again, I was prepared with this answer. So that is when I gave this answer.
Okay.
And so what this does is this reinforces your earlier answer as well, and it seems to bring a continuity in the personality that you're trying to portray.
Okay. Okay. After this, what did they ask you further?
There were a couple of questions related to general knowledge.
Okay. What were the questions?
One of the questions I think was at that time, who was the mayor of Delhi?
Okay.
And again, one of the opinion-based questions. It was related to current affairs. I'm not able to recall it, but it was again analytical question related to current affairs.
Okay. Fine. Were you questioned further about your work in CL? What was your profile, etc.? Were such questions asked?
Yes. So he did ask me about the entire profile that I was working on. that actually had become a continuity of introduce yourself. So while I was introducing myself, it actually delved deeper about okay, so what did you do in sales, and why did you do that?
Okay.
So they asked in detail about how I went about doing sales, and
So the interview started with your introduction, and then they, from in your introduction, you mentioned your job profile, you mentioned your hobbies,
right.
and the interview took off with your job profile itself. They started by asking you questions related to your work, your sales profile, what all had you done, why had you
Right.
chosen sales, why had you chosen CL, why did you not choose some other area, why did you leave out some other company. These were the major questions. They also
Right,
asked
right.
you why not something in continuation with your engineering background. So they again asked you to justify your career choices.
Exactly.
Okay, and after this,
And,
the interview, tell me.
please go ahead. Please go ahead.
And after this, the panel asked you about your strengths and weaknesses when you yourself had mentioned that you took up sales because it matched your strengths and gave you the opportunity to meet people and to discuss things with them.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Were there also questions related to your ACAD subjects during graduation?
No, there weren't any questions related to the ACADS during engineering.
Okay, so in your case, there were no questions related to ACADS. But for our, over here we have some questions coming up. I'm a fresher from engineering background, and how should I answer when I'm asked why MBA now, not after 2 years of work ex? There's another question which says, do we need to brush up on technical subjects from graduation? I have 2+ years of work experience. See, Nilanjan, in the most straightforward answer to this is that you cannot predict whether in your panel the interviewers will ask you about your ACAD subjects or will not. Hence, you certainly cannot ignore subjects that you yourself have studied during your graduation. So definitely it makes sense to prepare at least 1 or 2 subjects which you had during your graduation. You can certainly highlight those and present them as your favorite subjects. You can mention those. But it will definitely be very useful for you if you are prepared on at least 1 or 2 subjects that you had during your graduation. So you certainly should not ignore your subjects during graduation. It would not be a safe option. Are maths questions asked? That is another question that has come up. Puneet, your opinion on this?
We're talking about maths questions?
Yeah.
No, nothing like that. I mean, again, as you said about okay, so as you talked about the questions related to ACADS, it's not predictable. They might give you a puzzle of these sorts, but that is generally not the trend in MDI.
Okay. So generally, MDI panels have not asked maths questions specifically from candidates, but you cannot be very sure about it. So if it is absolutely basic math, something that you would have done at perhaps school level or maybe during your graduation if you had maths, then you would be expected to be prepared for such questions. Otherwise, please note that sometimes panels ask questions just to check a candidate's composure. So even if you are not prepared on something, even if you are unable to answer some question, there is no reason to worry about a single question. You can very well tell the panel clearly that, sorry sir, I do not know the answer to this. Maybe you can even highlight some other area that you are better at, that you are more interested in, that you are more comfortable in. So again, you can take the opportunity to lead the panel to those areas where you are stronger, where you are better. You can certainly do that. Another question that we have is, if I have a small stint at MDI in a junior executive department program, executive development program, can I say that? Yes, Subhash, whichever achievements you have, whatever work you have done, whatever studies you have done, You can certainly mention those. There is absolutely no harm in mentioning those. You can definitely mention those. How to answer the dreaded question, why should MDI consider you? Puneet, your views on this?
See, this question is probably common to all the B schools and all the B school aspirants as well. But I think here you should talk about the strengths, the core strengths that you've had. You should talk about your achievements. And of course, you cannot compare yourself to other students, and I don't think it's a very advisable idea to say that, sir, I'm the best out of the lot and everything, because of course you do not know the lot. So my opinion would not be not to come up with such statements, but at the same time, this is a question which would, they're probably asking you to brag about yourself. So you can always go about telling them about your strengths, about your achievements, and what you would bring to MDI. So a student who's probably, so I'm one of the students who had a sales experience. Now I know that a lot of students would not have sales experience. They would probably have a IT experience. So this is something that I can say. Also, IT students can probably say that, sir, you're bringing me to probably, if I'm doing this course, if I'll be able to do this course to MDI, I'll be able to bring some of the IT knowledge in here and probably improve the processes. Now, it's also the way you tend to say it. Somebody who's good at sports would probably say that, sir, this is my area, which I feel that I'll be different from the lot, and that is why I'll be able to contribute to MDI. So these probably are the 3 points that you should mention in such a question. That is my opinion, and anything from you, Rahul, on this one?
No, that would be it. You can, whenever you are asked a question as to why you should be selected, for that matter, even if you have a question like why should we reject you, even for a question like that, you can very well say that overall I'm a good candidate. I do not feel that I should be rejected. And again, you can highlight your strengths. You can give the panel some reasons to select you. So for a question like this, for a question like why should you be selected, or even for the question like why should you be rejected, you are there to get yourself selected. So use these questions as an opportunity to talk about your strengths, your unique strengths possibly, your academic background, your whatever achievements you have, whatever significant achievements you have, you can mention those. These questions will be an opportunity for you to again highlight your strengths, present your strengths to the panel all over again. Okay, one question that has come up is it necessary to sum up a GD, or should we do it only if we are told to reach a conclusion? See, it is not at all necessary to sum up a GD or to arrive at a conclusion at the end of the group discussion. In fact, many a times, even when panels clearly say at the beginning that you should arrive at a conclusion, even then, many a times, candidates are unable to reach a conclusion during the allotted time. There is no harm in these at all. If you attempt a summary, if you attempt a conclusion, and the group is able to arrive at a consensus, or you are able to present your summary, then it may be beneficial for you. But there is no such hard and fast rule that you definitely have to try for it. There is no such definite rule. Another question that is there is, what should be the answer to a question wherein the panel asks you if you have taken mock interviews or attended mock GDs, is it fine to say yes? Oh yes, it is definitely fine to say yes. There is absolutely no harm in that. You can definitely be honest here. Some of the time panels will even ask you which coaching institute did you join in order to prepare for CAT or for other B school entrance tests. Even such questions are asked. And there is absolutely no harm in being honest in your answer. You can certainly mention whichever coaching institute you have joined or whatever you have done. There is absolutely no harm in mentioning any of these. It's not as though the panel is going to be biased against a particular institute. So don't worry about that.
And I would just like to add that at this point, if they tell that you've been taking coaching, so you can put it in a very positive aspect that Yes, you were very sincere about getting into a good college, and you worked really hard. And one of the advantages that a coaching institute did provide you was it gave you a platform to, sit around and interact with the people who are going to be your competition in the, let's say, the CAT exam or the further interviews. So you need to project it probably that way, in a very positive aspect.
Yeah, you can definitely talk about your focus and how you did not want to waste your chance, hence you took some help. You can definitely talk about those. Can we show them the certificates, etc.? Yes, you can definitely show them whatever certificates you have regarding your hobbies or your extracurriculars, whatever achievements you have. If you have certificates for any of those, do take them to your interview. Even if you do not have certificates, you can still mention whatever achievements you have. When the panel questions you further on those, if you can justify whatever you have said, if you can explain what you have done, then certainly these will count as positives for you. So even if you do not have certificates, you can certainly mention your achievements. You need not hide your achievements just because you may not have some certificates for those. And if you have some certificates, then definitely take them with you. Also, for some people, when we talk about hobbies, some people may have hobbies like writing poems or writing novels, or writing, sorry, not novels, but perhaps writing short stories or articles, etc., painting, sketching, drawing, drawing cartoons. These are some common hobbies that people do have. If you have any of these as your hobby, then you can definitely you can definitely take some samples of your work and show it to the panel. There is no harm in doing that as well. You can certainly do these things. Till now, none of the institutes have asked for your certificates. None of the panels showed any interest. Yes, Nilanjan, in some cases, panels will not look at it. In some cases, panels will ask for it. In some cases, when you mention certain achievements, panels may ask for your certificates. So it is always better to have them with you. If some panel asks you for it and you do not have the certificates, then you may find it somewhat difficult to justify your decision of not carrying your certificates. If some panel does not show any interest in the certificates that you have carried with you, then of course there is no harm in that. So you can definitely carry your certificates with it. And even if they don't ask, can we offer to show it to them? Yes, as you go in for your interview, you can certainly offer your file towards them. You can certainly offer them the chance to look at your certificates. There is absolutely no harm in that. One question that we have here is, I'm a fresher from engineering background, and how should I answer when I'm asked why MBA now and not after 2 years of work experience? Vasu, over here for a question like this, you can definitely talk about the benefits of pursuing MBA right now. You can acquire some more learning before you join the corporate world, before you start working, and so you might be able to work at higher levels, perform better, etc. You can think about the benefits that MBA will provide to you, and you can definitely talk about those. There is absolutely no harm in these. Another question that we have here is a lot of stress given to extracurriculars? In general, you do not have any one particular area on which panels lay stress. In general, you do not have any such area. But the point here is that there is no hard and fast rule that the panel has to stick to a particular area. If someone in their introduction, let's say, if someone has a lot of achievement in their extracurriculars or in their hobbies, and if they highlight those in their introduction, then certainly the panel can focus on that. If the panel is really very interested in a candidate's extracurriculars, then they may choose to give a lot of focus to that. But it is not really possible to predict whether in your case this is going to be the case. I have calls from other IIMs, FMS, and I am asked which one I will choose between MDI and say FMS. How should I answer this? First of all, in answer to a question like this, you should always be polite and at the same time be realistic in your answer. Do not denigrate any institute, but at the same time be realistic in your answer. If, let's say, if I'm asked, if I have a call from IIM Ahmedabad and at the same time MDI Gurgaon. And if I am asked which one I would prefer, if I tell the MDI Gurgaon panel that I would prefer MDI Gurgaon over IIM Ahmedabad, then what will be the impression that the panel will have of me? They will definitely be able to see that I'm simply lying just because I'm in an MDI interview. So lying anyway or giving an unrealistic answer anyway is not going to help me at all. So it is best to be polite and at the same time realistic. You can definitely say that both of them are very good institutes, but this institute has a higher reputation. Maybe it is an older institute, and that is and has better infrastructure or more value, more recognition in industry. Therefore, I would want to go there. You can certainly take a reasonable answer, like you can certainly present a reasonable answer like this. There is absolutely no harm in being honest. If you are not being honest, then again, the panel might be able to spot that very clearly, and in such a case, it may show you to be a rather insincere kind of candidate. So it is always better to be honest, to be realistic in your answer, and at the same time be polite. Do not say that MDI is bad or costly or any such thing. You can definitely talk about the advantages that the other institute has, and at the same time you can say something like MDI is also a good institute, and I'm very interested in this, which is why I applied to this institute and I've appeared here for the entrance process, for the selection process. So be polite and at the same time be realistic. One other question that is there is thinking time given in the group discussion? Yes, as we were discussing in the MDI Gurgaon, here were given around 15 minutes time for the discussion and around 3 minutes time to think about the topic. So once the group is given the topic, they are given about 3 minutes time to think about it, and then 15 minutes time for the discussion. So yes, thinking time is definitely given as well. Are questions from specializations like finance or marketing, etc. asked? See, if a candidate himself has some work experience in a particular area, then it is logical that there can be some questions from the particular specialization. Similarly, if some candidate clearly says that they are interested in a particular area, or if somebody has applied for a particular specialization, then it is likely that there can be some basic questions from those areas. Otherwise, if you are asked which specialization you will choose, then you can, if you have the opportunity, if you have not applied for any particular specialization, then you can definitely say that I want to go through the first year and learn more about different areas, and only then I will take I'll take a decision on this and choose which area I like most and go for that. You can certainly give an answer like this. Otherwise, if you are very focused on a particular specialization, you can certainly mention those, and in that case, it is quite logical that there can be some questions asked, basic questions from that area of specialization.
Also, I would like to add in this regard is about in case you're taking a stance for a specialization, you need to know what would be your career path for that specialization. Have an idea about that. You just cannot randomly say that I would want to take up marketing because I want to go into, say, Nestle or ITC, because probably those are the companies that don't even come to MDI campus. So you need to be clear about what you're saying and what path would your choices take you to.
If you are mentioning a particular specialization, then do have some understanding of the basics, including the kind of job profiles that can be expected from that particular specialization. If asked to ask something about the institute, should we ask why are the fees skyrocketing? Nilanjan, it might be a difficult question. Yes, you can ask them this in the interview. There is, towards the end of the interview, the panel asks you to ask some questions. Yes, you can certainly put this question forward. Asking such a question is certainly not necessarily a bad choice. If you can think of some better questions, some other questions, yeah, you can do that as well. Otherwise, you can go in for this question. That is, you certainly cannot say that asking such a question is a taboo or any such thing. Ideally, though, if you ask something more interesting, something more relevant about the particular institute itself, that might be a better choice.
Also, I think that since we've talked about the MDI panel would be very polite in listening to you and will be very warm towards you. This question might seem a bit probably a hostile question to them, but again, it depends on the way you ask it, because asking them why is the fees skyrocketing would be to put it in very crude terms. So you might want to tone it down.
Any other questions that the students have, please post them on chat. We will be taking up questions during the webinar as we have been doing. So Puneet, in your interview, your questions primarily came from your job profile, your strengths and weaknesses, and current affairs. Were you also asked some questions regarding your hobbies or extracurriculars?
See, actually, I mentioned my one of my hobbies was to play squash, and it so happens that a lot of people do not follow squash. So in case, so that was probably the reason that I was not asked any question on my hobbies, and I was grilled only on my job and strengths and weaknesses. But in case you have a hobby that is followed by a lot of people, let's say cricket, there obviously can be a lot of questions. Obviously, there can be analytical questions again.
Okay. So even related to hobbies, you can have analytical questions. For example, if you talk about something like cricket, then India's performance in test matches away from India post the World Cup, whether there is why is there a, say, lack of fast bowlers in India, why are Indian batsmen now not able to perform well against fast bowlers abroad, and so on. Such questions or other questions which are analytical in nature may be expected from MDI Gurgaon interviews.
Exactly. If somebody comes up with the hobby, say photography, you need to know about the different kinds of camera, different lenses, what are the basics of photography. You might be questioned on that.
Okay. One question that has come up is how much is the GD weightage and how much is the PI weightage? Any idea about this, Puneet?
Again, I would not be able to comment on that particularly, but I think there has been a revision this year, so there will be a larger weightage given to GD and PI as compared to the earlier years. So, but there are no figures available as of now.
You can try to look at the MDI website. If they have any notification regarding this, then it should be available on the website. So if there is any such notification, then you can check whether they have mentioned the weightages for the interview as well as the group discussion. Typically, for many institutes, what happens is there is some weightage for the PI, there is some weightage for the group discussion, and at the same time, there is some cutoff level that they have, some cutoff that they have for performance in group discussion as well as personal interview. For example, if I remember correctly, for IIM Lucknow, they have clearly said that you need to score the 25%. You need to score at least 25% of the total marks allotted for the group discussion as well as the interview. That is the cutoff for both of these. So we can expect that most of the other institutes also may have similar cutoffs for performance in group discussion as well as interview. The exact weightage allotted to group discussion as well as interview, that will vary from institute to institute, and for that, if MDI has come out with any notification, you can look at those on their, you can search for those on their website itself. Nilanjan, one question, Puneet, one question that Nilanjan has asked specifically to you: what do you think are the aspects that set MDI apart, the best part of MDI?
Okay, so some of the best things about MDI, which other campuses might not be able to have, is the kind of industry interaction that MDI has. So there are a lot of MDPs, there are a lot of executive development programs. The part-time program is there. So there is a lot of industry, interaction that is created through the professors and by the industry itself. So Gurgaon is the upcoming, hub for the services industry. Also, you have the manufacturing companies around. So students get a lot of live projects. By live projects, I mean that there are problems in industry which actually they want to get a solution to. Now, so what they do is they hand over those projects to MDI students. Now, these are the projects that in case there is nobody to do, they'll have to hire somebody and do it. So that gives a lot of learning to MDI students themselves. So I myself have worked on close to 6 live projects in companies like Indian Oil, Maruti, PricewaterhouseCoopers, GlaxoSmithKline. So these are some of the companies that I've worked with, National Thermal Power Corporation. And these were the problems that were, very much a part of the industry and they wanted a solution to.
Okay.
So this is one of the good parts, and also, it's a beautiful campus to live. So that's just on the lighter note.
Okay. One question that is there is, what is the ratio of number of seats to number of students called for interview?
Okay, so I had this statistic. So the number of students called were probably 3,000 last year and last year as well. And the number of seats that are available is 360.
So roughly there was a 1:9 ratio.
Exactly.
Okay.
And thereafter they give a merit list defining the rank of all the students.
Okay, so
and that is how it moves.
So all the 3,000 students are given some rank.
I think approximately 2,300 students are given a rank. Not very sure about it. 2,300, 2,200 students are given a rank.
Okay.
They might even give ranks for up to 3,000 students for all the students that they call. And then there is the waitlist movement. So MDI, as you might know, has 3 programs. So there is the PGP, postgraduate program, there is the PGP HR, and there is the PGP IM program. Right. So PGP HR and IM are separate programs, and what they do is they give a common list. So let's say they give rank to all these 3,000 students or 2,300 students, and then in the first list they would probably, so while filling the form you would have filled in a preference whether you want to take PGP or PGP HR or PGP IM. According to that preference and your rank, you will be assigned a program.
Okay, so which program is given first weightage?
It's not a weightage. Now let's say if a student has filled in his first preference to be PGP or let's say PGHR and his rank is 250, so he would be allotted seats in PGP HR because there are seats available, in case there are seats available, right? So usually it's a trend that PGP is the program that is taken up, is given the first preference. So what happened last year was that the first 500 rank students, some of them had filled in HR as their first preference, but a lot of first 500 students had taken PGP as their first option, and they were given a they were given a final call for, they were given a final convert for PGP. So 500 students, although there are only 240 seats.
Okay.
That is because the MDI understands that there will be waitlist movement, and in case they do not give these buffer calls, it will take a long time to sort these waitlist movements.
Okay.
So till first 500 PGP was given, then there was I think till 700 or so PGP HR was given, and another 100 calls for PGP IM. That was in the first thing. And later on, PGP moved on till last year. PGP moved on till rank 750s or so, and PGP HR and PGP IM ended at rank 1300 or around that.
Okay. 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 One question that has come here is the placement scenario equally good in all three programs?
Okay, so see, these are very different programs. In PGP, you would have the option of taking up specializations like marketing, finance, strategy, and operations. Right. So the kind of companies that will be visiting for PGP are very different as compared to PGHR and PGP IM. I won't be able to comment about the placement scenario about all the three programs, but it depends on it varies probably every year. So sometimes the HR requirement, industry requirement is high, so HR is placed higher. Sometimes the marketing requirement or finance requirement is high, so that is the program that is placed more.
Okay. How is the IM program? This is one question that Ankur has.
Okay, so IM program is a program which wherein you get in. So you're there's a tie-up with the ESCP Europe, and you're on one of their campuses. That is, you're in Europe for probably 8 months. Now, the advantage of this program is that it gives you an international exposure. You're going there, you're doing your studies. Also, you may end up having an internship over there, which you might convert to a job. That is your preference. If you want to give it a shot, you want to go out, and it's largely a general management program. It would not specifically train you on international management. You can always take courses related to marketing, finance. It's just that you get a tinge of the international exposure, which is larger than the exchange program. That is what you get, and you get to study with a diverse set of people for a longer duration of time. Also, the good part is that you will be able to do an internship over there, so you might be able to convert a job. But the internship over there is not guaranteed. So you might end up getting an internship over there, or you might have to come back and search for an internship.
Okay. One question that is there is, can I change to PGP if I want to forego PGP HR?
Okay, I think this is by Suhas, and he says that his first preference was HR, right? I'm not very sure if this will be a possibility. I think he'll be allotted PGP HR because that is the first preference he's given in his form. Something like this. There can be an option between PGP HR and PGP IM, that too during probably the final stages of counseling. And counseling occurs while the waitlist moves. So counseling is done for the waitlist candidates. But an upgrade from PGP HR to PGP, I haven't come across such a case. But of course, if you talk to the professors, the admissions committee, that might happen. But don't keep your hopes too high for that.
Okay.
And I think this is a question best addressed to the administration itself. If you want to change your preference, it's better that you put in a mail to the admissions office, and they might be able to help you with the same.
Okay. One question that Nilanjan is asking is, does the exchange program add value to a student in terms of placement?
You see, I haven't been on exchange, so I won't be able to comment on it. But of course, again, the company would want to know what is your takeaway from the exchange program. So there are a lot of students who go out there just just because it's a trip to a foreign land, which probably is a bit cheaper if they had gone otherwise. So you need to have specific value add. So what students do is when they go on an exchange program, they tend to do live projects, the live projects I was talking about, in the companies over there. So there have been students who work with companies like Orange, Virgin Mobile, and the other companies. So if you have such international live projects, that is something that will add value to your CV. But again, don't keep it as a thing to just enjoy out there.
Okay, one question that Ankur has is there a chance that my GD discussion would also be asked in my interview? Ankur, as we had discussed when discussing the GD pattern over here, we had discussed that yes, in the interview, in some cases, at the end of the interview, students were queried on the topic that was given to them for their group discussion. In some cases, students were also asked more about certain points which they had mentioned themselves during their group discussion. So yes, there is certainly such a chance.
That is again, as I talked about the fact that they are very open and they would want to listen to you. So they would want to probably analyze the thought process that you had, behind the point that you made. So in case you made a point that really, caught their attention, they would want to ask about it. But that's actually a good thing because probably you were able to make your presence felt.
One question that is there is, and what are the prospects in PGP-IM if you are unable to bag a foreign internship?
Okay, so the placements for PGP-IM and PGHR are common. So once you come back from the PGP-IM program, you sit in the placements with the PGP candidates, and you're interviewed for the same profiles. Let's say marketing, finance, strategy, ops. So you're interviewed for the same profiles, and they're the same companies. So there's no difference over there.
Any other questions that students have? You can ask them over here. If there are no further questions, then we will be ending the session in about 5 minutes' time. Thank you all for joining in. Thank you, Puneet, for sharing your experiences with the students.
Thank you, Rahul. And I like to wish all the best to all these candidates who will be coming here.
Any questions that anyone has asked, please, anyone still wants to ask, please post them. Okay, so if there are no further questions, we will be ending the session now. Thank you all for attending this webinar. All the best, everyone.